Let me just start. This is a great day. It is a great day, which shows what the future of automotive in Canada is. And we're celebrating the future of the world's greatest auto industry.
More than 210,000 American auto jobs at risk. Nearly $4,800 added to the average price of a new vehicle in the United States. And an industry that represents almost 5% of the American economy now facing one of the most dangerous supply chain disruptions in modern manufacturing history. These are not distant projections. They are the early warning signals emerging as the escalating trade war between the United States and Canada begins to fracture the deeply integrated North American auto system that took more than half a century to build. Standing inside a major automotive manufacturing facility in Ontario, Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered a warning that signaled something far more serious than a routine policy announcement. He made it clear that Canada no longer believes the old trade relationship can be treated as predictable. His government is launching a new auto strategy, backed by billions in incentives and industrial investment, while preparing the Canadian economy for a future in which tariffs from the United States could arrive at any moment. The most surprising detail behind that shift is something very few policymakers in Washington are openly discussing yet. By the end of this report, you will see why some economists believe the tariffs meant to protect American industry may instead accelerate the rise of Canada as the next manufacturing powerhouse. And the evidence behind that claim is more dramatic than most people realize. What began as a political calculation in Washington has now spiraled into an industrial crisis of unprecedented proportions. By late 2025, the cumulative effect of tariffs imposed on everything from steel to electric vehicles had added an average of $6,400 to the price of a new vehicle in the United States. In the case of electric vehicles, that number skyrocketed, with some models seeing price increases of more than $9,000. These aren't just numbers, they are the direct consequence of a tariff strategy that is now reverberating through every segment of the auto industry. The impact of these tariffs is not limited to prices. It's tearing apart the very foundation of the North American auto supply chain. A vehicle that once crossed the Canada-US border 5 or 6 times during its production now faces additional tariff costs with every crossing. Even seemingly small tariffs on steel and aluminum are compounding, driving up the cost of parts that manufacturers can no longer afford to produce domestically at competitive rates. The result? A massive disruption to the once seamless cross-border supply chains that have powered the industry for decades. But the true gravity of this situation is hidden in the numbers that industry analysts are now revealing. In 2026, one study by a prominent manufacturing group projected that if current tariff trends continue, the U.S. auto sector could lose as much as 18% of its total production capacity by 2030. That means nearly 4 million fewer vehicles rolling off U.S. assembly lines each year. And with it, the potential loss of 210,000 high-skilled manufacturing jobs, more than 10% of the sector's workforce. The damage doesn't stop there. By the end of 2026, a staggering $320 billion in lost automotive capital investment could drain out of the United States, as manufacturers already facing rising tariffs and weak demand look elsewhere for more stable, predictable environments. One major automaker, quietly evaluating its next move, stated that they were already in discussions to shift substantial portions of their North American production to Canada, where the risk of sudden tariff hikes is far lower. Meanwhile, in Ontario, the landscape could not be more different. Thanks to Carney's industrial strategy, Canada is positioning itself as the safe harbor for automotive investment. By 2026, foreign direct investment into Canada's auto and battery sectors had surged to a staggering 95 billion Canadian dollars, almost doubling the total automotive investment Canada had seen over the past 2 decades. This includes new gigafactories being built across Ontario, which are expected to add over 70,000 jobs in the coming years, many of them high-paying, skilled positions that would have once gone to Michigan or Ohio. Here's the chilling reality. Canada, by simply avoiding the self-inflicted wounds of escalating tariffs, is emerging as a magnet for global capital in the auto sector, as U.S. Manufacturers face a volatile and tariff-heavy landscape. Canada's steady hand on trade policy and its generous clean tech incentives are starting to lure critical industries away from the American heartland. And this shift is just the beginning. If the current tariff trajectory persists, analysts predict that within the next 5 years, Canada could secure up to 40% of all new automotive manufacturing investments in North America. That's a staggering shift, considering the United States has historically been the undisputed leader in automotive production on the continent. As the United States continues down its path of increasing tariffs and trade isolation, Canada's stable, predictable environment is starting to look not just like an alternative, it's becoming the preferred choice for auto manufacturers, battery producers, and the entire electric vehicle ecosystem. And the implications of this shift are far-reaching, not just for the United States, but for the future of North American manufacturing as a whole. So what does this mean for the future of American manufacturing? The secret few are talking about is that Canada's quiet industrial revolution could become the United States' greatest economic threat in the next decade if Washington does not reverse course soon. The toll of escalating tariffs on the United States automotive sector is no longer a matter of theoretical economics. It is a harsh reality playing out across the country, from the assembly lines in Michigan to the car dealerships in Texas. And the impacts are felt most acutely by the workers and consumers who are directly dependent on a stable, cost-effective, and predictable auto industry. The most immediate victims of the trade war are the American consumers, who are now facing the most significant price increases in decades. By 2026, the average price for a new vehicle in the United States had surpassed $53,000, the highest in the nation's history. Electric vehicles, which were initially marketed as a more affordable alternative, have now seen their prices soar, with some entry-level models jumping from around $35,000 to nearly $48,000. These price hikes, resulting from tariffs on imported components, are putting new cars out of reach for many middle-class families. But it's not just the price of vehicles that is making things difficult. Consumers are now facing longer wait times for new cars, with some dealers reporting that their inventories have increased by more than 20% since tariffs were escalated. What used to be a relatively predictable market now feels chaotic. For many families, purchasing a vehicle is one of the largest financial decisions of their lives, and the uncertainty around pricing and availability is forcing people to hold on to their old cars longer, driving up maintenance costs and leading to growing dissatisfaction with the market. For American workers, the trade war has triggered an even more direct impact: job losses. By the first quarter of 2026, more than 38,000 automotive workers had been furloughed or laid off due to the disruptions caused by tariffs. This number is projected to rise dramatically over the next few years, as analysts warn that tariff escalation could ultimately lead to the loss of more than 210,000 manufacturing jobs by 2030. The U.S. auto sector, a vital part of the American economy, has already begun to feel the impact of declining production. The ripple effect is beginning to hit local economies, particularly in states like Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, where auto manufacturing is a key source of employment. Entire communities are facing the loss of these high-paying jobs, which are often the backbone of local economies. Many of these workers, particularly in smaller factories and parts suppliers, are struggling to adjust to the new reality. Even though they are facing layoffs and shrinking job opportunities, few have the luxury of transferring to another industry. The automotive sector has long been a source of stable, well-paid employment for high school graduates and those without college degrees, but the evolving tariff strategy risks dismantling that stability. But it's not just the direct workforce that is suffering. The U.S. auto supply chain, which relies heavily on parts and materials crossing the Canada-US border, has been deeply disrupted by these tariffs. A recent study revealed that 42% of automotive suppliers in Ontario's manufacturing corridor had delayed capital investment due to the uncertainty surrounding future tariff hikes. The ripple effect of these delays will have a devastating long-term impact on the industry. When suppliers delay investments or halt production, the disruption isn't limited to the suppliers themselves. It spreads across multiple industries: steel, electronics, plastics, chemicals that depend on the auto sector for revenue. This cascading effect has already been felt across American factories, particularly in the heart of the auto industry in the Midwest. Major manufacturers, unable to absorb the rising costs, have been forced to reduce shifts, slow production lines, and even shut down plants temporarily. In the most extreme cases, some plants are reporting up to a 30% decrease in production capacity due to the combined effects of rising tariffs and a shrinking consumer base. This slowdown is not just temporary. It is beginning to shift the entire way automakers do business. Many workers are finding themselves at the mercy of companies that are either delaying new investments or scaling down their operations. As a result, a growing number of auto workers are not just facing layoffs, but are struggling to find new jobs in an industry that was once their long-term career home. For many, this is the kind of disruption they never imagined would happen in their lifetime. After all, auto manufacturing has been the lifeblood of America's industrial economy for over a century. The economic ripple effects of a weakened auto sector are not confined to factory floors. They extend far beyond that. In Detroit, once the proud center of American automobile production, the slowdown has already triggered widespread uncertainty. As manufacturers scale back, ancillary businesses such as auto parts suppliers, logistics companies, and even local restaurants are seeing their revenue plummet. Local governments are starting to feel the pressure as tax revenues fall sharply. For many American cities that depend on auto industry jobs, the effects are potentially devastating. The lost jobs, fewer consumer purchases, and a slowdown in the local economy will likely lead to declining tax revenues. This will force local governments to make tough decisions on where to allocate funds, with vital services such as education, healthcare, and public infrastructure at risk of being cut back. In many ways, the United States is facing a perfect storm of economic instability, one that was triggered by tariffs meant to protect domestic industry, but is now unraveling the very sectors it was designed to safeguard. As the trade war with Canada and other global trade partners escalates, the consequences for everyday Americans are becoming more severe. So, what's the solution? Could the United States reverse course on its tariff strategy before the damage becomes irreversible? Or will these economic fractures continue to deepen, pushing the country further into an uncertain future? The truth might surprise you, and the shocking reality is something many in Washington aren't discussing just yet. The United States could very well be facing the steepest price tag for these trade policies, and the reckoning could be closer than anyone expects. As the United States continues its aggressive tariff strategy, the global consequences are beginning to materialize in ways that are more severe than many anticipated. What started as an effort to protect American manufacturing is quickly evolving into a self-inflicted wound, one that could cost the country its place as the undisputed leader in the North American auto sector and beyond. International investors, who once flocked to the United States for its predictability and large market, are now looking at North America through a different lens. And the perception of Washington as a stable, reliable economic partner is quickly eroding. Companies that need to make billion-dollar decisions about new factories, supply chains, and long-term investments are now factoring in political risk in a way they never had to before. The risks of tariffs, unpredictable trade policies, and a deteriorating manufacturing environment are simply too high. The United States may have underestimated how much this tariff strategy would discourage investment. In the automotive sector alone, several key global manufacturers are now reevaluating their plans. Some of the world's largest automakers are already redirecting their North American production to Canada, where the trade environment is far more stable. Battery manufacturers are flocking to Canada, enticed by lower energy costs, stable policy, and attractive investment incentives. For instance, South Korean battery makers, who once planned massive gigafactories in the United States, have begun negotiating with Canadian authorities about setting up shop in Ontario instead. The shift has not gone unnoticed. By 2026, Canada had already secured over 95 billion Canadian dollars in foreign direct investment, including deals for new auto assembly lines and battery plants decisions that would have been inconceivable a few years ago. Canada, thanks to its tax incentives for clean technology and its renewable energy infrastructure, is becoming a preferred destination for companies that need long-term stability. U.S. manufacturers, under increasing pressure from tariffs, are finding that Canada's low-cost energy and clean tech tax credits make it easier and more profitable to produce electric vehicles and batteries across the border. This has left the United States in a precarious position. In essence, Canada is no longer seen as just a side player in the auto industry. It is emerging as the key competitor, the country offering the investment climate that America's allies and global investors want. And this shift is not just about the auto sector. It is part of a larger pattern in which the United States, once the dominant industrial power of North America, is now struggling to maintain that dominance as it faces greater competition from a neighbor that has increasingly positioned itself as a safer, more attractive investment hub. The contrast between Canada and the United States could not be clearer. While the U.S. continues its policy of isolationism through tariffs, Canada has doubled down on openness and long-term industrial planning. Canada's investment incentives, combined with its clean energy infrastructure, have made it one of the most attractive industrial platforms in the world. And the financial world is taking notice. Global investors are now starting to view Canada as the more stable, predictable environment for future manufacturing. The perception of the United States as a reliable economic partner is beginning to fade. Some investors have even gone so far as to say that Washington's erratic approach to trade and its unpredictable tariff regime have made the United States a risky market. The question now is, how much longer can Washington afford to push its closest trading partner and neighbor into the arms of global capital before it loses out completely? The facts are speaking for themselves. By the end of 2026, analysts predict that Canada could capture up to 40% of new automotive manufacturing investments in North America, an extraordinary shift that will leave the United States scrambling to keep its place as the continent's industrial leader. So, what is the United States' real risk? If tariffs continue to escalate, the U.S. auto sector could lose not only market share, but its competitive edge as Canada surges ahead as the new epicenter of North American auto production. The United States, instead of securing its industrial dominance, could find itself left behind in a world where stability and predictability are the true drivers of future investment. The implications of this shift go far beyond the auto sector. It's a stark reminder that in the global economy, countries that provide the best investment environment, not the harshest tariffs, will become the leaders of tomorrow's industries. And there's a secret here that not many in Washington want to discuss. As the United States continues to build walls in the name of protectionism, Canada is quietly becoming the industrial leader of the future. And the trade war that Washington initiated could very well be the catalyst for Canada's rise. The strategy adopted by Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Canadian government is more than just a defensive reaction to the trade war. It is an aggressive industrial restructuring that positions Canada as the continental leader in the electric vehicle ecosystem. Carney has made it clear. Canada will not wait for Washington to make decisions. It will take matters into its own hands, offering unparalleled incentives to global investors and making its economy a magnet for the next generation of manufacturing. By 2026, Canada had already secured over 95 billion Canadian dollars in automotive and battery manufacturing investments, an amount that is nearly 4 times the total auto investment Canada had seen in the previous 2 decades. This wave of investments has given Canada a significant edge in establishing itself as the heart of North American clean mobility. The Canadian government has used its tax credits, subsidies, and favorable energy policies to lure international electric vehicle manufacturers, battery producers, and supply chain investors. Carney's leadership has laid out a twofold strategy that is both bold and calculated. Investing in clean energy infrastructure to power electric vehicle production efficiently and sustainably, while securing a dominant position in critical mineral processing to ensure Canada can meet the growing global demand for batteries. By 2027, projections suggest that Canada could be supplying up to 18% of the world's demand for battery-grade nickel and nearly 12% of the world's lithium processing capacity. The strategic investment in clean energy and critical minerals positions Canada not only as a hub for electric vehicle manufacturing, but as a critical player in the global supply chain for the future of clean mobility. But while Canada is proactively building its future, the United States remains trapped in a cycle of uncertainty driven by its tariff strategy. The key risk for Washington is not just economic stagnation, but the erosion of the North American auto sector. The longer the trade war continues, the more likely it becomes that U.S. manufacturers will be forced to abandon their domestic investments and shift production to Canada, where tax incentives, stable energy costs, and government support provide a more reliable environment for long-term investment. By continuing to escalate tariffs, the United States risks weakening its industrial base in a way that could take decades to recover from. Already, industry experts predict that by 2030, the United States could lose 210,000 high-skilled manufacturing jobs from its auto sector alone. That's not counting the 4 million vehicles in lost production that the country could see by the end of the decade, as manufacturing capacity shrinks in the face of trade uncertainty. The long-term consequences for U.S. workers who depend on a stable manufacturing environment are potentially devastating. Many of these workers have already faced plant closures and layoffs. The shutdown of several Midwestern auto plants is no longer a hypothetical issue, it's happening now. The trade war is driving critical suppliers to financial distress, leaving factories with missing parts and disrupted production lines. For Canada, the timing could not be more critical. While the United States struggles to maintain its industrial strength, Canada is embracing a future shaped by clean technology and electric vehicle production. As one of the world's largest reserves of critical minerals, such as lithium, nickel, cobalt, and graphite, Canada is uniquely positioned to supply the world's electric vehicle market with the materials it needs. And by processing these minerals domestically, Canada is moving up the value chain, securing higher returns, and becoming a key player in global battery production. Canada's role in this transformation is becoming increasingly evident to global investors who are taking advantage of a stable, predictable investment environment that the United States can no longer offer. Us, manufacturers, under increasing pressure from tariffs, are finding that Canada's low-cost energy and clean tech tax credits make it easier and more profitable to produce electric vehicles and batteries across the border. This has left the United States in a precarious position. In essence, Canada is no longer seen as just a side player in the auto industry. It is emerging as the key competitor, the country offering the investment climate that America's allies and global investors want. And this shift is not just about the auto sector. It is part of a larger pattern in which the United States, once the dominant industrial power of North America, is now struggling to maintain that dominance as it faces greater competition from a neighbor that has increasingly positioned itself as a safer, more attractive investment hub. In the coming decade, North America faces an economic choice. Does it continue to rely on the United States as the cornerstone of its manufacturing industry, or does it shift the balance to Canada, a country that is demonstrating strategic foresight and resilience? The secret that many haven't yet realized is this: Canada's rise could be the United States' loss. If tariffs continue to destabilize the North American auto sector, Canada will not just adapt, it will thrive, reshaping the future of manufacturing in North America and beyond. For Washington, the cost of this shift will be enormous, both in lost jobs and in industrial clout. Carney's vision is clear, and his timing is impeccable. Canada is positioning itself as the new center of North American manufacturing. The stakes are too high for the United States to ignore. And if things continue down this path, Canada's industrial renaissance will leave America playing catch-up in the clean mobility race. The escalating trade war between the United States and Canada is no longer just a conflict over tariffs. It is a battle for the future of North American manufacturing. What started as a policy to protect domestic industries in the United States has turned into a critical risk for its own auto sector, with rising vehicle prices, weakening demand, and job losses now mounting at an alarming rate. Tariffs that were meant to shield American jobs have instead driven a wedge between the United States and its most reliable industrial partner, Canada, revealing deep vulnerabilities in the U.S. auto sector. Meanwhile, Canada has leveraged this uncertainty to redefine its industrial future. Through bold strategic investments in clean technology, critical mineral processing, and electric vehicle manufacturing, Canada is quickly positioning itself as the dominant force in the new North American auto ecosystem. By 2026, the country had already secured nearly 95 billion Canadian dollars in automotive and battery investments, attracting global manufacturers and technology innovators looking for a stable, predictable environment to expand their operations. While Canada seizes this opportunity, the United States risks being left behind. As major U.S. manufacturers quietly shift their production to Canada, the U.S. could lose 210,000 high-skilled manufacturing jobs by 2030, along with a 4 million vehicle production deficit. This is not just a short-term setback, it is a strategic miscalculation with long-term consequences. The trade war, meant to strengthen American industry, is instead accelerating the rise of Canada as a global industrial leader. The stakes are higher than ever. If Washington continues down this path, Canada's rise will not just be a challenge, it will be a new industrial era that could permanently reshape the North American economy. The question now is clear. Will the United States pivot to save its manufacturing future, or will it lose its edge to Canada in the race for clean mobility? Is this a bold strategy or a risky mistake for the United States? Subscribe for more fact-based global analysis. Thanks for watching.